Isn't it fascinating how sometimes you stumble across something online, maybe just a casual video, and it ends up revealing these surprisingly deep layers about life?
Oh, absolutely. It happens all the time. You think it's just surface level, but then,
Exactly. And that's what we're doing today. We're diving into this one video. It's titled Three News Balcony Drama, AI Careers and Book Publishing. Seems kind of random, right?
yeah, a bit of a mixed bag on the surface.
But stick with us because our mission here is to
Yeah.
sort of pull out the really interesting threads, the stuff that resonates beyond just the video itself.
Right. Think of it like we're connecting the dots for you, taking these seemingly separate pieces and seeing what bigger picture emerges about, modern living, personal struggles, achievements, that kind of thing.
Precisely. So we've zoned in on four main things from this clip. First, there's this neighborhood conflict involving a cat, actually.
The balcony drama.
The balcony drama, yeah. Then we'll touch on the advice given for handling that kind of tricky situation.
Mhm.
After that, we shift gears, completely looking at excitement around AI careers, mentorship, much more positive.
The definite change of pace there.
And finally, something genuinely celebratory,
Yeah.
a big personal win for the speaker, publishing their fourth book.
Which is quite something.
It really is. So let's start at the beginning with this feline-related neighborhood issue, the balcony drama.
Right. So the core problem presented is straightforward enough initially. There's a neighbor's cat, and it keeps jumping onto the speaker's balcony.
Yeah, a bit annoying maybe.
Well, it seems it's more than just visiting. The speaker mentions the cat is actually scratching up the furniture out there.
Oh, okay. That definitely escalates the irritation factor.
For sure. And there's this added layer of anxiety because summer's coming, and the speaker is worried the cat might start, using the balcony as a litter box.
Oh, yeah. Nobody wants that.
Yeah.
That's a pretty universal dread for apartment dwellers, I imagine. That feeling of your space being invaded.
Exactly. It starts small, maybe, but it builds into real stress. Your personal space feels compromised.
So the speaker does try to do something. They build some kind of barrier, which sounds like a perfectly reasonable step.
Seems logical, yeah.
But, and here's the rub, they claim the neighbor just keeps pushing it back, undoing their efforts without, it seems, any direct conversation.
And that lack of direct engagement is key. It hints that there's more going on beneath the surface than just a cat liking a balcony view.
Well, yeah, because the speaker seems genuinely hesitant, actually afraid to talk to the neighbor directly. Why is that?
That's where it gets heavier. This isn't just social awkwardness. The speaker explicitly mentions really bad past experiences with other neighbors.
How bad?
Bad enough that they mention an alleged death threat stemming from some previous disagreement.
Wow. Okay, that completely changes the context. You can see why they'd be wary.
Absolutely. That kind of history, that kind of trauma really shapes how you approach any potential conflict, even one that seems relatively minor, like this cat issue. It ramps up the perceived risk.
And it feels like this specific cat conflict starts to tap into some bigger, maybe more unsettling themes about, like, city living today.
I think so. Let's unpack that. What stood out to you?
Well, the fact that the speaker says they don't even know what this neighbor looks like, living so close, yet total strangers, it's that classic urban alienation, isn't it?
It really is. That anonymity cuts both ways. It gives privacy, sure, but in conflict, it can make things feel way more tense because there's no existing relationship, no social buffer.
Makes sense. And then there was this other layer, which felt quite fraught, involving race and immigration. The speaker seems to feel they can't really speak up or set a boundary without being slapped with a negative label, or worse, facing threats.
Yeah, that adds a really difficult dimension. It touches on distrust, maybe perceived prejudice, the feeling that your concerns won't be heard fairly or could even be twisted because of who you are.
Which must lead to this profound sense of powerlessness, right? You're in your own home, but you feel trapped by this cat issue, trapped by the fear of making things worse.
Completely. That feeling of being stuck where your home, your sanctuary, becomes a source of chronic, low-level stress. It's incredibly draining. These little unresolved things, they really do build up.
So in the middle of all this anxiety, the speaker's friend or conversation partner, Norman, gives some advice. What was it again?
The advice was pretty simple on the face of it. Just put a no cat sign on the barrier.
Okay, a sign. Seems so. Passive enough. Non-confrontational.
You'd think so. But it's interesting, isn't it? Even that feels too risky for the speaker.
Yeah, they hesitate. They're worried that even putting up a sign could provoke the neighbor, lead to some kind of retaliation.
And that reaction tells you everything about the level of fear and anxiety they're operating under. It shows how delicate that balance feels between just trying to set a simple boundary and potentially triggering a much bigger conflict, especially given those past experiences.
It's really stark. But thankfully, the video doesn't just stay in that space of frustration. It shifts
Yeah.
towards something more positive.
Yes, absolutely. There's a distinct pivot towards connection and future possibilities. The speaker talks about looking forward to meeting up with a friend named Mikhail.
Okay. A bit of light relief.
Definitely. You can hear the anticipation. They've got plans. Go to a university, walk over to EPFL.
That's the Big Tech Institute in Lausanne, for anyone listening who doesn't know.
Right. And they even mention maybe recording something together. So there's this sense of potential collaboration, shared activity.
It's a nice contrast to the isolation implied in the neighbor situation.
Yeah.
Connection versus alienation.
Exactly. And it highlights how important those social ties, those shared positive experiences can be as a buffer against stress and feeling powerless.
And there's more to this meetup with Mikhail, isn't there?
Yeah.
Something about careers.
Yes, there's a mentorship angle. It seems Mikhail is figuring out his career path, and the speaker shares this really quite striking example.
Going how?
Well, they talk about someone they know who's working in AI, doing consultation, creating content, and apparently earning between $500 and $800 an hour.
Wow. Okay, that is striking. $500 to $800 an hour?
Yeah, working between Dubai and Switzerland. It's presented as this very concrete, very aspirational example of what's achievable in AI right now.
That's incredibly motivating, especially, I imagine, for someone like Mikhail who's exploring options.
Yeah.
It makes AI feel less abstract and more like a tangible, high-value path.
Precisely. And you can sense the speaker's own energy shifting as they talk about this. They're excited to share resources, links with Mikhail.
It's almost like, you know how sometimes if you feel stuck in one area, you pour energy into another where you do feel you have some agency.
That's a very common psychological mechanism, channeling frustration or powerlessness from one domain into positive action in another. Mentoring Mikhail, exploring the potential of AI. These offer a sense of purpose, control, maybe hope that's missing in the balcony situation.
Finding an outlet, basically. Making a difference somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of making things happen, that brings us to the final piece of news in the video, which is arguably the biggest personal win for the speaker.
Right. The book. They published their 4th book. That's huge.
It really is a massive accomplishment. After hearing about the daily grind and the neighbor stress, this lands as a really powerful counterpoint. It shows serious dedication and follow-through.
Yeah, they mentioned the ebook is live, the paperback is under review, and you can really hear the pride, can't you? They describe it as possibly their best work.
Calling it something that contains truth and wisdom, that's not just professional accomplishment. That sounds like deep personal fulfillment.
Definitely. To pour yourself into a project like that and then feel that strongly about the result, especially the 4th time around, that's sustained creative drive.
Absolutely impressive.
And they're not stopping there either. They want to get it translated into English, reach more people,
Yeah.
and they're already planning book number 5.
It just underscores this incredible resilience, doesn't it? Despite the stresses we talked about earlier, there's this powerful internal engine driving them forward creatively. That passion is clearly a major source of strength.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into this seemingly quite varied video, what are the main takeaways? What should someone listening really pull from this?
I think for me, it's the richness of it all. It's a snapshot that captures the complexity of just being human right now. You've got the everyday micro conflicts, the stresses of shared spaces, the anxieties of urban life,
The cat drama, basically.
cat drama. But then right alongside it, you have this reaching for connection, this excitement about the future AI, mentorship, and this really significant personal achievement with the book.
It's that juxtaposition, the mundane rubbing up against the meaningful.
Exactly. It shows how we navigate these things simultaneously. We grapple with the neighbor's cat and we write books. We feel powerless and we find ways to mentor and build for the future. It highlights, the impact of those small stresses, the complexities of just getting along, but also the power of purpose, creativity, connection.
So maybe the thought to leave our listeners with is, how does this resonate in their own lives?
Right. Where do you see that mix? Are there small, nagging frustrations that maybe point to bigger underlying tensions? What are your sources of excitement, your creative outlets, the things that give you that sense of achievement or hope?
How do you balance the balcony dramas of your own life with writing your own books, whatever form they might take.
Precisely. Reflecting on that interplay between the everyday challenges and the bigger aspirations, that's often where we find some really valuable insights.
Pretty good.
You never have something to complain about.
Well, let me try to complain about something. Very nice sunny day today. And yesterday, however, was much colder. So that's something I could complain about.
The weather. It wasn't because it was colder yesterday.
And also the day before that, I think it was like 0 degrees for like the past week. And only today it's warm and nice. So it's very disappointing that the weather was so bad yesterday.
Okay, but you're still a lucky guy. If that's the only thing you can complain about, it's you're a lucky guy.
Well, I don't have blonde hair and blue eyes, right? That's also annoying.
Well, I don't know. I don't think it'd be very nice to have that in your case, unless you want to do something LGBTQ. I don't think it would be any nice. As a drag queen, it could be good, but for the rest, I'm just kidding.
I'm a very strict teacher, right? So no way you're allowed to share your own thoughts or ideas.
I think you're cynical, but it will waste our time if we play little games like that. Anyways, if you don't want me to tell you, I don't. We can just start with the cards straight away, but it's interesting.
No, I would love to hear what you want to say. I'm just in a jovial mood.
Okay. Well, I have 2 good news and 1 bad news. Which one do you want to hear first? So the bad news is not so bad, but it's annoying to me. It's a younger woman and her mother, and they live together in a small apartment just next to me. And they have a cat, and the cat always comes on my balcony. And during the winter time, I didn't mind because everything is closed and he wouldn't enter my apartment. But in summer, I will open and he will enter my apartment. I know it because he already did it. He already entered my apartment. Then he goes around and, they have like claws. And with the claws, he starts scratching them against everything he finds. And I'm also scared that he will defecate or do pee, in my apartment. So the thing is, he just has nothing to do in my apartment, and it's a mean cat. So every time he sees me, he wants to bite me. He gets really angry. He's like if I'm an enemy, and he wants to fight with me. So the thing is, I put something on my balcony so that the cat doesn't come over, from one balcony to the next. And that thing has to be quite out of the balcony, because if it's not really out of the balcony, then the cat manages to get around it. He already managed once. Once he managed to get around it, and he managed to get on my balcony, but once he was on my balcony, he couldn't go back to his balcony. So I had to take it off, then he went back, and then I did it a little farther, so the cat doesn't come, And now, those women, I think it's them. She just pushes the construction back into my balcony because she doesn't like it. And if she pushes it back into my balcony, then the cat will come again. And it's just very, very annoying, It's a small detail. But when you live with those kind of things all the time, it makes it very painful. So you will tell me, you just have to talk to them and you find a solution. But that's not the case. From my experience, every time when I talked with my neighbors about anything, it was an unpleasant experience. The only exception I do is for Marianne. And even she is painful. Her husband wanted to kill me a decade ago because I talked to his wife. And the last time I talked to her, she was quite psychotic, So it wasn't easy to deal with. If people are like you or your friend, then it's Mikhail. Then everything is fine, because you're very smart, you're very polite, and everything goes very well. But if you have mass immigration on your doorstep and you have the kinds of people, you just don't want to argue with them. You don't want to get in a fight with them. It's like what you always say, when you see a drug addict, what is your behavior? Will you tell him the truth, or will you talk to him, or will you just try not to avoid any conflict? And the only way to survive with the mass immigration I'm facing where I live is to never talk, to never have anything to say, don't even know. I think I never saw her face, of my neighbor. Somebody told me it's 2 black women and one old one and a young one, but I never even saw her face. But it's unhuman. It's just unhuman. And those people are mean. So when they know stuff about you, or if you do something they don't like, then they start doing mean things against you. They start talking to the landlord, making up crap. And then you have to explain to the landlord that everything he believes is a lie. And it's just very, very, very painful. For that, you have to take a lawyer or somebody who knows a lot of law and defend your right so you don't get kicked out of your apartment. I already had that kind of situation. You know? So I'm just making a huge story about this, and I'm sorry to waste your time with it. But it's just to tell you that some things are painful, you know. There are also great things, and my other two news are great, but that is a real pain. What do you think about it?
Yeah, do you have that construction on right now, or did you move it back after the neighbor moved it?
Well, the thing is, the neighbor just pushed it back on my apartment, but it's still there. And actually, it's half there, but when it's half out, the cat managed to come back. So for now, the last days, the cat didn't come on my apartment. So I'm crossing my finger, and if I change nothing, maybe he will never come again on my apartment. But I don't know that, you know.
Yeah, if the cat comes back, then I would push the construction back again and then put like a sign on it on the other side, which the neighbor can read, and write something like "no cat" or something like.
Yeah. That would be a solution. Yeah, you're right. I'll think about it. I just don't want him to get angry. I don't want to make an enemy out of him, you know, because I have him for decades until he dies, until I die or he dies properly. Yeah, there's a very low chance he gets out of his apartment. And unless I'm very wealthy tomorrow and I can spend much more money on rent, there's very low chance that I want to move out of my apartment. So the thing is, I just don't want to make an enemy. So if I put no cat on it, I can do that. It's a good idea. It's a smart idea. But he might find that offensive, you know? And then he might get angry and do me something mean in another way. And I just don't.
I think why you have to write civil play at the bottom.
Yeah, I'll think about it. Maybe I'll do that. Thank you, Norman, for your advice. Thank you. The other news are great. So once Michael, I see him on Friday, and I hope we have some time to spend the afternoon together. I'll bring him to university, and we eat something there, and afterwards we walk to the EPFL, and then we see what he's up to. Last time we tried to make a recording, it didn't work. So if he's up to it, I'll make one more and I'll share it with you afterwards. So that's nice. And I really enjoy meeting your friend because he's a smart guy. And there's a lot I want to talk with him about, actually, also related to AI, because he's still in a moment where he's searching what he will do for a living, you know, during his life. He's still searching for that. And I think if he has some knowledge in AI, there's a way to make quite a well living out of it. I know, for example, somebody who has a YouTube channel. He talks about AI, but he also works for businesses and so on. And he was in Dubai for a long time, and now he even was in Switzerland skiing. And he charges 500 USD or 800 USD even every hour. That's his fee, you know, for consultation. So there are people who make a lot. And the last video where he's in Switzerland skiing, that's also very expensive, you know, just for fun. I think he could have spent on the trip 10, 15K, you know. So he's very well off, and he's talking about AI. And I don't think for somebody like your friend to imitate that would be impossible, you know. So I will just ask him if he's interested, and if yes, then I will share the link to him for him, so he can take a look at what he does, and maybe it gives him an idea and he does something similar. Because there's demand. Some people know how to sell themselves, others don't, you know. But anyways, I'm looking really forward for our meeting. And yeah, I mean, the thing, what you say is with no cat, I mean, she must figure out why I put that construction on my balcony, because I'm not the only one who does this. The guy on the other side of the apartment, so I'm on the right, and the guy on the left does the same. He also puts a construction so the cat doesn't come on his apartment. So she must think a little, and she also knows that the cat sometimes disappears. And the time he went to my apartment but couldn't get back, he was like 24 hours or even more on my apartment until I took the construction off and he could go back. So she must realize that the cat goes away and goes to the neighbors, you know. So why should I write no construction if she already knows that the construction is for the cat? Why would I put that construction up if it wasn't for the cat, you know? I think they should have a brain. I know that they're not very smart, but still.
Yeah, you know, for some people, these things might not be obvious. So I wouldn't, it might be just, you know, she might think people are racist and want to block block their balconies from her or whatever, right?
Then she makes crap up, and you don't know how mean they are. They're capable of going to the police and telling that I'm a racist and saying racist stuff all day long, and that she's all scared of me because I'm so violent. They make all kind of crap up. And then you have to prove, if it goes in front of a judge, that it's all BS and that it never happened, I just hate that because I don't want to waste time on it. Anyways, let's skip the question. The last thing is the best news. So my best news is that I managed to publish yesterday my 4th book, and the ebook is already online, and the paperback book should be online during the next 2 days. So that is awesome. I'm very proud of it. It is really an excellent work. It's my best work until now, and maybe that's the best thing I will do entire life. I will keep writing. I already started a document for my 5th book. I didn't write anything. It's blank for now, but I already opened it. So I will start working on my 5th book. But I'm very, very proud of it because I think it's an excellent book. It's very well written, and it has a lot of truth in it and wisdom in it if people want to take it serious and study it. So I'm extremely pleased with it. And the only thing is missing is the paperback book. But normally, if the ebook did to the review, because they do a kind of review of the book before they publish it. So I don't know what actually what kind of review they do, but they're checking stuff. Maybe that I don't put any pornography in it, or I don't know what. But they're checking some stuff that I don't talk too much about history. Anyways, I have no idea what kind of review to do, but it is subject to approval before they put it online. But I never had, at this state of publication, I never had it rejected. So I'm quite confident that in 2 days, the paperback book will also be available. And now my question is, I want to translate it into English, just so people who are talking English, if they want to check the book, they can also read it. And I'm of course thinking about you and your friend Mikhail. So I hope you are interested and you'll take a look. What do you think about that? Would you take a look at my book once it is available? And what would you like, the ebook or the paperback book?
The book is also fine, but I'm old school in many ways, right? So I like to hold I have many books around me, I like real books. So yeah, but firstly, congratulations. I think that's very big news, long project, right? I think you wrote that book for, how long did you write it? I guess I'll ask you.
2.5 years.
Right.
I was very prolific, and it's a very thick book. It's 426 pages, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. So that's a very long process that you were able to finish and complete. That's very impressive, and also I think it's a good time. It's time to celebrate and enjoy it.
Yeah. I know that our time is limited, Norman, when we talk, but if you read the book, what would really please me, if you don't have to read it in one go, it's my philosophic thoughts, and like Marcus Aurelius did them. So you don't have to read all of it in one go. Normally I would recommend reading a couple of pages and then thinking about the content. And what would really please me is if you would, for example, mark the passages you find interesting, and we could have a talk about it. Just to have your feedback. Because that would be very valuable to me. If I see what you think and how you react to the book, that will give me plenty of ideas, and it then creates an internal dialogue in my head. And that internal dialogue I can produce with it. I can write with it, It gives me plenty of ideas, and I can make something out of it.
Yes, looking forward to it. How long do you think it might take to translate?
I have to start translating it, but I think it should be capable. I don't want to say, if I work a lot on it, I could make it in 2 months. But I think I should give myself 6 months, because I do a lot of things, and I'm not sure that I will spend a lot of time translating it every day. But during the next 6 months, I think I should be able to have a translation and publish one.
Yeah,
Yeah, I really don't want to force it on you, but if you take a look and we can have a discussion about it, I would find that very enriching.
Do you want to share a bit about the contents of the book also, or the main topics in it?
Well, I talk about a lot of various things. Mainly it's a Stoic book, so you will find the Stoic principles explained again and again, but it's not annoying. Because I always apply it to real life. And you find also some discussion about religion and the last segment of the book about medicine and the way we overuse it nowadays. So it's just full of wisdom, but because and that's fresh in my mind because the last thing I wrote in the book, just my look on medicine is just refreshing. And if you understand it, because I'm just telling you that most people use it too much and all the time, and they take treatments that aren't necessary. And by doing that, they don't improve their health, but they have a real health risk at the end, you know? And to read that advice and to also see why I think it is the case is actually quite good, because you will be, if you agree with it and you understand it, then you will be more skeptical in the future when they want to push a treatment on you, and you actually think and you actually will start asking myself, I have nothing, none of my friend is sick, I see nobody dying, so why should I accept a treatment, you know? And you will have some critical thinking once you read the passage and you understand. And you know, this, for example, is controversial. So there will be some doctors, like Nobel Prize winners, who agree with me. But there will be a lot of doctors also who will tell me, no, you cannot talk like this. You have to do what the OMS tells you. The WHO, not the OMS, the W, yeah, I think in French it's called OMS. It's WHO in English. You have to do what they say, you know? But that's just an organism. And the guy on top of it isn't even a doctor, you know? So that's a very political thing. And you should be skeptical with it. Anyways, it's just nice to read. It's a very pleasant book to read. I also want to actually read it again and again. But as I have to start with translating it. But I also want to read it. So pleased I am with it and the content. Did that answer a little the question?
Yes, I think it did.
Now, you have something special planned for today, I think, because you did last time.
It's a few things. Well, two things, I guess you could say. So first is a small game, which I'd like to play together with you for maybe 15 minutes, maybe 30 minutes. We'll see. So let's start with that. So I sent you a link in the Google Meet chat. So if you could open it and share that page, then yeah. All right. Can you open the link? And maybe let's start from the end here. So on board, click on turn, and then we'll move backwards to flop and pre-flop exercises. So you have the cards on the left, then the other player has the cards on the right, and you have to guess how often you would win in a scenario like this. And you can guess from 0 to 100%.
Well, maybe my question is very, very stupid, but I have a 2. So I have 1 pair, and I don't think he has anything. So I won. And you want me to know how many times I will win if I play that? Is that the question?
Well, there is 4 cards on the board, so the river card is yet to come, right? So
how many times I will win once the river card comes?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, but what will your guess be based on?
So I can just I would say I want to put 1%. Yeah.
So that would mean that you think you're going to win this hand 1% of the time. Is that correct?
Yeah. Not even 1%. I think it's 0. But
why would you think 99% you would lose here?
He starts betting and I won't call his bets with a 2.
So here's the thing with this exercise. It does not imply any betting. There is no folding in this game. It's just your cards and you see the other person's cards.
So you're asking me if 2 players face them and one has a 2 on the board and the other has an ace-king, how many times the guy with a 2 wins? Statistically, you don't care about betting. You just ask statistically how many times the guy with a 2 wins. I still I still think it's 0 or 1%.
Okay, so let's think through some river cards. Can you tell me river cards you would lose on?
Ace, king,
Can you tell me river cards you would win on?
jack,
Any other river cards you would win on?
a 2,
Any others you could win on?
and a spades.
All right, any others you could win on?
Any others you can win on.
What if the river would be something like the 4 of diamonds? Who would win then?
A 4 of diamonds. I don't think it affects me. I don't think it affects the villain.
So who would win then?
I would win.
Who would win on 3 of diamonds?
I would win.
Who would win on 5 of diamonds?
I would win.
Who would win on 6 of diamonds?
I would.
So does there seem to be more river cards you would win on or more river cards you would lose on?
More viewer cards I would win on. But I changed my mind because I have a flush draw. And with a flush draw, I think my chance of winning are higher. So I now push it up to 55% chance of winning. Maybe it's even 60.
So the way I would go about solving this problem, I would first identify at this moment on the turn, which hand is stronger, which hand is weaker right now.
Yeah, my hand is stronger.
All right. And then I would do the math exercise where I would count out all the favorable cards for the opponent and how many there would be. And then I would multiply that number by which number?
By 2.
By 2. And then that would give me a percentage. That would be then the opponent's winning percentage, right?
You just said how many favorable cards I would have. So in
Not you. I would do it for the other side because you don't need a favorable card. You could also win on a neutral card. The opponent needs a favorable card here. So that's why I would do it from his.
yeah, so he has 12% chance.
All right. How many favorable cards did you find?
3 aces and 3 kings.
Did you include the king of spades in his favorable cards?
I think I did, yeah. Yeah. The spade would give me a flush. So it's not a favorable card for him. Okay, in this case, he has 5 outs. He has 3 for an ace and 2 for a king, which makes 5 times 2 for the river card. And it will be 10%.
So where would you have to move the slider then? All right. Now the actual answer will actually be a little more favorable for him. The reason is that, to be more accurate, 1 out is not 2%, but it's 2.25%. So actually, his actual percentage will be quarter more than 10%. What's a quarter out of 10?
2.
Yeah, well, a little more than 2, but quite close. What's half out of 10?
5.
What's half out of 5?
2.5.
Exactly. So that's the quarter out of 10. So that will be what would be what has to be added to this 10%, that 2.5%. And the reason for it is that as we're on the turn, we see 1 more card on the board, and we also see his 2 cards, which we usually wouldn't. That's why the percentages will be a little bit bigger here. So if you add 2.5 to 10, what percent do you end up with?
You want me to add 2.5 to 10? Why 2.5?
Because that's a quarter from 10.
Okay, then 12.5.
12.5. If you had to round 12.5 to a round number, what would that end up being? 12 or
13.
Yeah, so I would give the opponent 13% to win here, even though the math you did was fine. All right. So that's a guess I think will be exactly accurate, but maybe I was wrong. Let's check. Looks like I was inaccurate. So you see by the color, there's a color scheme at the top. It shows that we're how many percentages away from the correct answer.
I think the correct answer is higher.
Yes, indeed. But at the top, there's a color scheme, a legend.
Okay, 2 to 5% away.
Right. So we have to guess 2 to 5% more. So how about we guess your original guess, right? I think your original guess was 90%. Maybe would 90% be 2 to 5% higher than 87? All right. Now it tells us what?
1% lower.
Yes, indeed. So we see here that actually it was only tenths more, which I'm a bit surprised by. But, these are very difficult exercises to get exactly correct. So I'm not sure why my 12.5% wasn't correct in this case.
Yeah, but I don't think that the small difference makes that kind of difference, but knowing that the guess is around 90% is much better than thinking 1%, you know? So that's the huge difference. That's the huge mistake you don't have to do. Then, and then if it's 1% higher or 1% too lower, that doesn't make a difference. Because you can, you cannot adapt your game to that small changes, but you can adapt your game to thinking that you have 1% chance of winning or 90% chance of winning. Then yes, you can adapt your game.
Yeah, I think something like a 5% error rate here would be a pretty good thing to aim towards, to be less than 5% away. All right, let's do a few more of these. So here's the trick how I like to start with this. First, I try to establish which hand is in front, and then I move the slider all the way in favor of that hand for this moment. Yeah, but
no, it's
okay. And now I would start counting the outs and doing the math for the player who's in disadvantage, right? In which case we would count the favorable outs for us or the villain.
For us.
All right. So what could be the favorable cards for us?
Ace or jack.
All right. Are there any other?
I don't think so.
All right. What if you're looking to trade a little bit? Is there a way we could make 5 cards in a row?
I don't think so.
Well, try again.
So 7, 8, 9, 10 jack. Yeah. So with a 10, I could.
All right. So what were the favorable cards? How many were there total?
4.
Well, all the favorable cards, not only the 10s.
So 4 for the 10, 3 for the ace, and 3 for the jack. So it makes 10 outs.
Now, what will you have to do with that? 10 outs is just the number of cards.
I will have to multiply it by 2.
Okay, good. Now, remember the last exercise. By this math trick, you got to 10%, but do you remember the actual correct answer?
You said it's 2.5% more, but that was out of 10%.
But what was the answer it gave there at the end? Because it wasn't 2.5% more. Was it 5% more? Was it 1% more?
It was 1% more.
It was 1, right? It gave the 11% in the last one. So it only gave 10% extra. So if you gave 10% extra, what is 10% of 20? Well, what's 10% of 10?
Yeah, it's 2.
Okay, so how about we try that? We do the similar thing the program did last time, and we add 10% extra. Let's see how close we'll get with this. All right. Looks like this time it wants us to add a little more than that. So how much extra did it add?
2% extra. 3% extra.
3% extra. And the reason could be that maybe it didn't add 1% before, but added something like 1.4%. What would you round 1.4% to? Would you round it to 2 or 1? 1.4.
I would round it to 1.
Okay, but if you double 1.4, you would get what?
1.8.
No, try again.
2.8.
2.8. And if you would round that, you would round it to 2 or 3.
To 2.
2.8. Is it closer to 2 or 3?
3. Sorry, it's 3.
Yeah, so that would be rounded up. So this time we were closer. We were just 1% off. And it added 15% extra here. Last time 10%, but it has to do a bit with rounding. But overall, I think we can be happy with this guess here, right?
I am. Let's do one more. So let's see. Okay. This time the villain is ahead. No, actually he's not, because I have 2 pairs. So I'm ahead. And the villain can only win if he makes a queen. How many queens are there left? 2 times 2 makes 4%. So it would be this. And there's a little difference. So what do I have to do? Subtract 1 or 2?
So what's
10% out of 4 is 0.4.
right? And that you would round to 4 or 5?
4.
4. So it would stay the same. However, in the last exercise, it added 15%. What if 10% is 0.4? What's 15%?
15% of 4?
15% of 4, yes.
So 10% is 0.4. And so it is 0.45. 0.45.
Yeah, it's a little more than that. So how I would do it is 10% is 0.4. So 5% has to be half of that. What's half of 0.4?
0.2.
0.2. And now 10% and 5% together is 15%. So 0.4 and 0.2, 0.4 and 0.2. So you just add the 4 and 2 together, but keep the 0 point in.
The 4 and 2. Okay, 6 point.
So it would be 0.6. All right. So 0. Let's take an easier example. 0.1. If you add those together, then it will be 0.
Do we really have to to care about those 0%? Because it makes my life hard. I think I can get it. It just I don't see it written down and I'm messing it up. But is it really that important, those 0%? When people make
together with this, right? So
when people want to see a difference out of a probability with when we talk about 0.2 or 0.4% or even 0.0 and then something, I mean, it's a probability. Does it really make a difference? I know we have to be as exact as possible. It just, to me, it's a little strange. I mean, if I'm 5% in the 5% or in the 2.2, if I'm red, orange, I'm already happy. I don't really need to be 1% away.
You're exactly right. And in most things in life, it doesn't make a difference. Does it make a difference in Formula One if someone's 0.1 quicker or slower?
A huge difference. First or second, or even less than second makes a huge difference.
So I agree in poker also. I don't usually, yes, I agree with you. It's in terms of poker and no one plays to that accuracy really, but I just thought it would be a fun time to discuss it. And in this case, whether the correct answer will be 96 or 95 is dependent on that. And actually, I'm not sure which one it will be. So sometimes on the poker table as well, you just have to make a guess. So go with whichever one here, 96 or 95. I would go with 96.
Yeah.
And I did wrong here. All right. Looks like I'm on a bad guessing streak. But here's what's curious. See what color it gave us for our guess, right?
It says 5% away, which is a lot.
Which means we were way off here, right? So
yeah. How come?
We estimated the other player wins 4%. It has to be at least double that, maybe even more.
Yeah, how possible? Why is that possible?
Well, it is possible. Let's talk it through. Does the pocket queens have a chance to make a straight?
No, they do not.
You're right, but could pocket queens make two pairs?
No, they can be two pairs on the board, but it will not be a pair personal to the villain. If we take a 6, then he has two pairs, but it would give me a full house, so he won't win.
What if we take a 10?
It's the same.
Right. Any other things we could take?
A jack or 4. Yes, then he would have two pairs.
Right. And we would have 3 pairs, or no?
You would have 3 pairs. But
we can only use 5 cards, right? So
the thing is, if he makes a jack, he's in a better position if a jack comes, because he has then queen, queen, jack, 10, 10, jack, and we have jack, jack, 10, so then he would win.
All right. And also, what would happen with the
4? I don't think it changes something because it's a lower card than 6.
Okay, so what would
and as you said, only 5 cards.
Right. What would his 2 pair be if a 4 came?
Just 1 pair.
If a 4 came on the river.
He has queen, queen, 4, 4. But it wouldn't count. It would, he would still win, but it changes nothing. What does it change? Because, he would not win because he has 2 pairs, but he would still lose. No, does he win? Yeah, I think he wins. He still wins with a queen, queen, 4, 4. He wins because he has 2 pairs and they count.
Yeah, if both players have 2 pairs, who wins? The one who has
the higher
pair, right? Even if the other pair is low 1. If you have 1 high pair, then that 2 pair wins.
Yeah.
So both a 4 and a jack, we have to add to his outs in addition to queens. So how many outs would he actually have?
Well, there are 3 jacks and 3 fours, make 6. 6 outs. But that's too much, in my opinion.
Well, it's not a question of opinion here, though.
Because it's not his card, a jack or a 4. It's just a community card. And now I'm counting it as if it was his card.
Yeah, but the community cards can be freely used for everyone, right? If you have ace king, you also need support from the community card.
Okay, in this case, but that would make a huge amount of outs. It would give him 6 outs times 2, 12%, plus the 4 we talked about for his queen. So it would put him up to 16%.
16%, exactly. And then if you add that 10% extra to it.
10% extra, it would be 17.6. So we have to round it to 18%.
Correct. So I think that will be the spot on answer.
You see, I was very bad when we started this exercise, and I'm already much better at it. Yeah, it just shows you that we can learn fast.
Well, not everybody can, but yes, you've done very well so far. All right, let's hope we're right with this. It worked.
Okay, awesome. A very interesting game, and I love playing it with you. I hope we do it again in the future.
Before we finish, let's also do one for flop and one for pre-flop.
Okay.
All right, good start.
So now an 8 would give me a 3 of a kind. So there are 2 8 left.
Yeah, of course. So remember, we want to look at it from the perspective of the losing player. Do we need 3 of a kind, or would it just be extra on top of what we already have? It's like you have 5 Lamborghinis. Do you need 1 more car, or does the person who drives a bus need 1 car? Who needs more an extra car?
The villain needs an extra card.
Right. So even though, yes, an 8 would make us a full house, but that would be
okay.
excess.
I have to count for the villain.
That's what I'm saying, yes.
Okay, so the villain needs a 9 or a 7. That is 6 outs times 4.
All right. Pause. If a 9 comes, what would his hand be?
Yeah, it would be, he would win. But with a 7, he wouldn't win. But if he gets 2 pairs, he would still win.
All right. But right now, let's only count the outs, which are immediately good for him, right? With a 7, he would also need another 7, that last one in the deck. So that can happen, but it's less than 1. Well, it's less than 1% for that to happen.
Yeah, and he can combine the 9 and the 7. Can he?
Not really, because the community cards already has 1 pair on it. So if he made 2 pair with 9s and 7s, it wouldn't really matter.
Yeah. So the only card he can win is with a 9 or with 2 7s. So with the 9, he has 3 outs. So times 4, that makes 12%.
All right. Now,
Now, the 7 is more hard to calculate because now at this time he doesn't need 1 7, but he needs 2 7. So let's say, 1 7 would be 3 outs. And what's the chance of making 2 7s? Maybe we can give him 1 out for that?
No, I wouldn't even calculate 2 7s in a row. Well, I say that, and I just did, and it's 0.1%. So it's well, to be more accurate, 0.12%.
So we cannot give him anything for the 7.
Exactly. We should just ignore it, basically.
So then we are with 12%.
Okay. But here's one. Yeah, put it there, but don't guess yet. Okay, that's good. Now here's the thing. In this game, we have to guess how often we win. If there will be a split pot. Oh, we already forgot something. Before I get into that, what we forgot was what would happen if a king came.
Yeah, then it would be split pot.
No, not necessarily.
It is ace, ace, king, king.
And also a 5th card plays.
So it could be ace, ace, king, king. But then if it's a 9, it would be 9, 9. And it cannot be 6 cards. It can only be 5 cards.
The 5th card plays in a way that the highest 5th card wins. So let's say a king comes and then the river is a 2. So what we would have is ace, ace, king, king. And what would be our highest 5th card?
8.
And what would be his highest 5th card?
9. He would win.
Right. But there could be some split pots as well. For example, if a king comes and a river is a queen, would we then have the same 5th card?
Yes, we would.
Exactly. Yes, we would. But we do have to account for the kings. Because as it stands right now, any kings make it so that he has a higher 5th card and would be a favorite at that moment. So how often a king will appear by the end of this hand?
There are 4 kings left. So 4 times 4 makes 16. I thought you asked for queen. So for a king, there are 3 kings left. So it makes 3 times 4 makes 12% again.
Right. So now we should move our win percent 12% more to the left, right? So from 88, subtract 12. Right. Yeah, I would think that's a pretty reasonable guess now that we've taken into account a 9, a king. I mean, the tricky thing with a flop is there's some other weird things that can happen, right? It could be ace and an ace.
I don't get it. Yeah. So the king would make him win because he has a 9 and his 9 would count and I would only have an 8. That's why we have to count the king.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
But there's other weird things that can happen, right? The turn can be a queen and a river can be a queen, right?
Yeah. So if the turn and the river is a queen, then he would also win.
No, then it would be a split pot.
Would be ace, queen, and then his highest card, 9. So why would he not win? A king. Yeah, then the highest card would be a king. Okay, then he would not win.
But like we discussed with the 7, like it's not very likely that it will come queen, right? It's also going to be, I think, around 0.2%. But it could also come jack, or 10. So if we add all those 0.2% together, I think we can add at least 1 more percent for it. Maybe even 2.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, let's hope this time, I'm sure we'll be wrong, but let's hope we're at least less than 5% away, but we'll see. Okay, we're only 1% away. So now do we have to give him 1 more percent or 1 fewer percent? Perfect. I mean, I think I would be happy with this. I think we got pretty close. And really the fun about this exercise is that poker can often be quite surprising, that at first glance, things might seem different than when you look into them more deeply or more closely, right? Are you still here with me?
Yeah, I'm here with you. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you have to examine it very closely and you have to be very good with it.
So now we got to the toughest exercise for pre-flop. And one big reason why it's so tough is all sorts of stuff could come out. Straights, flushes, all these things. Yeah, sometimes there will be 5 cards in a row on a board, all these things. Yeah, so how to go about it? Well, I think with pre-flop, the best way is to just practice. Well, like with anything, practice and get more accurate. But there are some ideas I have with this. So firstly,
yeah. The question here is if with that card they make an all-in, who wins? Is that the question?
Well, yes, exactly. And how often that happens, right?
So here a villain should win. And how often? Quite often. Well, it's not 100%, but it's quite often. I would say it's more than 55%.
How can we win? Let's start with that, right? Let's start with the side or the player who needs to win, who needs to count outs or think about ways. So in this case, it's us. You need to figure out how can we beat king, queen. So will a queen help us in that?
No, it wouldn't.
Will a 3 help us in that?
No.
What would help us to beat a queen, a king, queen?
Only an 8.
Well, mostly an 8. I mean, there's again some weird ways. Maybe we make a straight with an 8. Maybe we make flush. What could we use here to make a flop? Which card could we use to make
a club? And
what's the issue with the heart here?
He already has a heart.
And his heart is higher or lower than ours?
Higher.
Right. So there's still some other ways, right? Maybe there comes some straight, we make our 8, but
so it's not, the heart doesn't count, only the club counts for us to win. We cannot win with a heart.
The heart could count if it makes a straight flush, right? If it comes 7 of hearts on the board, 6 of hearts, 5 of hearts, and then 4 of hearts, for example. But all these things are like Formula 1. These are going to be very small percent extras, right? So you were right in your original answer. It's mostly gonna just be about the 8. So the question is, by the river, how often will we see will we hit an 8? And one clue towards that is if you think about a scenario like ace king against jacks, who needs something from the board, ace king or jacks?
King needs something for the board, not jacks.
Do you roughly know how often ace king wins against jacks?
Jack is ahead, but by how much? Between 55 and 60% ahead.
Yeah, so generally it's said that it's 55% in the favor of the pocket pair, but even that changes a bit, because if someone has a lower pocket pair, then you have more chances to beat their hand. It depends if your cards have the same suits, so there are details. But very roughly, ace king beats jacks 45%, right?
Yeah.
But here's what's different. Ace king can beat jacks by hitting either an ace or a king, right? In this case, we can only hit half of the cards we have. We can only hit an 8 to win. So what I would do here is think that if 45% I would beat the pocket pair, then what's half of 45%?
It's 22.5. But I don't understand why I have to divide it by 2.
Yeah, so I didn't explain it the best. But what I mean there was that if ace king beats jacks 45, then ace king has 2 cards it can make a pair with, right? Because either an ace or a king would win. What's different here is we cannot really use the queen because the other player also has the 8. So my logic there was that compared to ace king, we can only use half of what ace king is using.
Okay.
So for that logic, maybe the percent is also something like what it would be for ace king in a somewhat similar scenario.
Okay. So now we have, but this time he has 2 cards. He can win with a king and a queen. Are we correct?
And also win with nothing, right?
And he can win with nothing. But I don't know the number. I knew the number for ace, king, but I don't know the number in this case.
Yeah, so what I asked you to do was to take half of 45%.
So we say that, so ace king is 55%. And now here only, is for 45%. Yeah. So 45%, half of it would be 22.5. So we guessed to the 22.5.
I would guess that, yes, but you'd have to round it also to a round number.
So 23?
Yes, that's what I would guess, but I could be wrong. I mean, pre-flop guessing is quite difficult. You can guess something different if you want, but that would be my guess. Well, I got lucky this time. I hope the logic made somewhat sense.
It's hard. Because the thing is, to make the calculation, I didn't use the cards actually. I started using king and jack, and I just took the result I have with ace, king, jack, and I put it on this card. And that's a little hard for me to do with my brain because it's not the same cards, But I guess but the underlying thing is the same. But then again, it's just that ace, king has against jack, but ace, king, jack is already winning, And here I'm not winning with my queen 8. So I think there's very low similarity between the two examples. Because in one case I'm winning, in the other one I'm not winning.
Ace king is also not winning, jacks is winning, right? Ace king needs to improve, hit an ace, so that's the similar part. The different part is that ace king can hit either ace or king, but we can only hit an 8. But yes, I agree it's difficult. And really the cause of the difficulty is if we're on the turn, we have this rule, count your outs and multiply by 2. If we're on the flop, we have this rule, count your outs and multiply by 1.
I know it for the flop is by 2 and the turn. The flop is by 4 and the turn is by 2. That's what I know. But I do not know it for the pre-flop.
Because there isn't a formula like that for pre-flop. That's the difficult part.
Yeah, we cannot just add both of them to figure it out. That won't work.
Yes, unfortunately not. But we can get better at this. And the good news is you still have 3 lessons on this order. And my plan would be every lesson to practice something like 15 minutes on this. Now, I know this time we did longer than that, but that was also the first time getting to know this tool.
It's a great tool to think about poker. a great puzzle.
All right, good. Now, the second thing I had planned, I think maybe we'll leave it for next time because that would take more time as well. And how about we finish the lesson with reviewing a few hands you marked for review from last week?
Yeah, if you have time, but I don't want to take too much time out of your day. So don't overdo it.
Yeah, I think let's do 12 more minutes. How about that?
Sounds great. Unfortunately, I did not open my hands to note, and it takes a long time to open it. So
That's good. We can use that time for meditation.
you want to take a break?
No. While the hand to note is opening, right? I'm going to just take a few big breaths and, meditate.
Yeah,
Or you could talk about something. I mean, it is allowed in these lessons.
thank you. It makes it so much more humane when you can talk to somebody, Our school system is so inhumane because you never have a real contact with somebody, You never have a real contact with your teacher or even the assistant. There's something strange about people when they get authority. They start behaving in a different way, They're like, you have to respect my authority, and then they start making up rules and you have to follow all their rules. But that's not interesting, It's just using violence. It's just saying, I have more power than you and you have to obey. And I don't like that relationship. I like a more honest, a more friendly relationship where you can talk about your pains and your worries and your difficulties. And the person in front of you tries to understand you and tries to help you with his knowledge and his capability of thinking about the situation. But I don't like the authority relationship where you have to obey and you never can talk really to the person.
I think I've had not too many, I've had few requests for if I could teach multiple people at the same time, right? To have like a conference call. But I've also never felt too comfortable about that because I feel like, it would be difficult for me, I think, to concentrate or know how to make it interesting for everyone.
Yeah, it's funny that you talk about that. I had a very, let's say it like this, a very interesting life because I knew a lot of extremes, and those extremes teach me a lot of lessons. That's why I would say that's the good thing and also the bad thing about my book is that I think a little different than people you see nowadays. That makes it interesting. If I would say just the same thing and just wokeness, and all the stuff you hear on TV or in university, then what's the point in reading my book? Everybody talks like this, But the extremes I knew made my life different. And I was in a billionaire school as I was a child. I was extremely poor, but they gave me, I don't know how you call it. They gave me a stipendium, or what's the English word for it?
Yeah, I know the word stipendium, yes. A grant, I think, maybe.
Yeah, a grant. Yeah, they gave me a grant and allowed me to stay. And I did stay until I was 18. So I saw the life of billionaires, but real billionaires, and how much money they can spend, how they live. For them, spending 50 millions or even 150 millions on a villa, that's possible. That's not something you won't see in those kind of circles. And it showed me a lot of extremes. Afterwards, I was homeless on the streets and I had no money in the pockets. So I also saw that kind of life. I saw all the extremes possible. And it made me think. It made me think about the systemic slavery system, to talk like the guy with, I show you the video, we live under, And it created some critical thinking because those extremes are so immense. They are so beyond what you can believe or imagine that it's just not comprehensible. It's not comprehensible that somebody can buy a villa of 15 or 150 million, and that's just a very small part of his wealth, while other peoples don't even have two USD a day, When you see that again and again, you are just like, man, what's the fucked up place I live under? How come the extremes can be so immense? But I was in that school. And actually, I think that the school is making a huge mistake because they teach their kids academia. So they teach their kids how to be a veterinarian. Is that how you say it in English? The guy who takes care of dogs. Veterinarian. Yeah. So a lawyer or a dentist. Man, Why do you teach that to kids who have billions? You know, their father have billions. They will inherit more money than you will ever make by working your entire life. And that's 100% certain. And it doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter if you're a lawyer, a judge, or anything else. They will be more rich than you can ever fund them or think of. And the only thing you teach them is academia, so that they can be a veterinarian or an architect. Don't you get that? Don't you?
I mispronounced it. It's not veterinarian. It's
No. So, or an architect. Don't you get that they don't have to be a veterinarian or an architect? They have people. They have architects who work for them. You know, as many things as they want to buy and build, somebody builds it for them. They don't have to learn that skill. They have to learn how to manage money. You know, that's what they have to learn. So I don't think that academia is any good for them. I don't think it will do anything for them. And one day, maybe when I'm old and I'm more famous, I will come. I will just have a talk with. It's a family business. So it was owned by the father, and he gave me the grant to stay in his school. And now it's his kid who is managing the school, but he does the same thing as the father. He just copied what the father does. And I just want to use some critical thinking and tell me, is it really, do you really have to teach billionaires how to integrate in academia and go to university? Do they really want to learn any of that stuff? I mean, it makes no sense to me. So I would like to introduce something else and tell them, instead of doing that, why not to separately something that is not academia and teach them stoicism, poker, and trading, because those would be skills that would be useful to them, very useful. But the skills they teach them, it makes no sense with their background. It makes some sense for your friend, Mikhail, because he doesn't have billions, you know? For him, it makes some sense, but it makes no sense for them. And I'm talking about that because if the guy says, yes, it's a great idea, and let's do that, I would need some help. I can teach stoicism, I can teach trading, but I won't be able to teach poker. So in this case, I would need some help. And I would propose to you, if you don't want to help me with the poker teaching. And then you would have to teach to an entire classroom, not just one people. So this long-winded thing, but it just probably I never go and see him and talk about it. It just, he did me a huge favor because he let me stay in the school. And I want to show my appreciation for that and give something back. And the only thing I can give back is the things I do, you know, and my personal impression of the school and what it does. And to me, teaching academia and nice diplomas where you go to university, unless you really want to study physics or string theory or something very special, you know, and you are some kind of genius like Tesla, Newton, or Einstein, unless you are that, it makes no sense to teach academia to those kind of kids, in my opinion. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, you've had very interesting experiences in your life and also been privileged to get first-class education. Very interesting, really. I don't think I've ever spoken to any billionaires in my life that I know of. So yeah, I think that's something like a unique life experience. That's very, very interesting, really, I think.
Yeah, you're correct. You're correct, Norman.
All right, we have 1 more minute until half an hour. So let's review one hand and then see what happens next time.
So everybody was limping. I went for 5 big plans to make them fold, but nobody's folding. Nobody cares. Did I go not high enough? I think that's normal to make a 5x.
It is normal, but sometimes also we have to do something a little different based on what our opponents do, right? And if they're very stubborn and you have a very good hand, I mean, surely your hand is strong enough to go bigger. So yes, if you wanted to, you have a very nice hand and you think they would call 5, they would call 7, maybe they call even 8 or 9, then yes, I would say it would be acceptable and maybe, well, I would even say a good idea to go bigger if that's how loose people are.
Yeah. The issue is, if I go higher, I would be scared that somebody takes it like a provocation, and if he goes all in, well, then I have to assume that he has a pair and I should fold. And they're not always that loose. So everybody checked on the flop. I also did check. I think you agree.
Yeah, I think checking or betting small are both good options. The benefit of betting small is that it will make it less likely someone bets big on the turn. So that could buy you some opportunities to see both the turn and the river card. But certainly, we don't want to bluff three opponents. We don't want to bet too much here. We don't have anything, but we do have two overcards, right? We can make top pair. And if you do the outs, you can calculate how often that happens.
It's 6 outs times 4.
24%, right? So if we make a small bet, less than that, then surely our hand is good enough to invest like 20% into this pot, or to invest 25% into this pot. So that could be an option, but certainly your option was also fine. The only difference is now you will more likely face a bet on the turn. If you bet small, it's more likely they would come along with your bet and then check the turn, and then you could see the river card as well. But both of these options are quite good.
Okay.
I don't mind how you
Wait.
approach.
If I bet here, I bet 20% of the pot because I have 24% chance of making it. Is that what you say?
Well, actually, you can bet a little more than that 24%, because if someone calls your bet, then the pot will also be bigger by the bet they call.
Yeah, but I cannot bet half pots.
Yeah, but that would be too much, right? But you could bet third, you could bet 25%. I think I would bet something like 5 big blinds here, which is around that 24% more. That would be like a fair price for your hand. And it also protects you from people folding you out.
Yeah. So my question is, if I press 2x or 3x, how much would I put on the table?
Tough to know. You have to try it out in your program, right?
Because I know it when somebody is limping, then 2x would double of what he's limping, and 3x would...
2x does anything here because no one has bet. So 2x 0 is still 0. 5x 0 is still 0.
Yeah, I understand that. From a mathematical point of view, it's correct. But I think that if I press those two buttons, something happens. He puts something on the table. I will try it once. Just I want to know if it's close to the 5x, because then I could use it.
On some sites, you can also type in the amount you want to bet. There's the box where you can type.
But
all right.
So now I have something. I could make a flush. So that gives me a lot of outs. It gives me 9 outs.
Extra. You still have use for an ace or a king.
Yeah, but one of the aces is already a heart. So I cannot count it that double.
No. I mean, one of the kings is a heart. You shouldn't count that double. But yeah, all the ace that could come wouldn't be a heart. Right, but one of the kings would.
So it's 9 outs for my flush, and it is 3 outs for the ace and 3 outs for the king. So actually, it is
2 outs for the king
because of the flush, and they're already counted in the flush. Or what's the issue?
Exactly, because you already would count one of the kings for the flush.
So it's 5 outs. So 9 plus 5 is 14, and I said 15. So I was quite close.
Which ends up with as what percentage?
28.
28%. Okay, let's see what happens in front of us.
So now, should I go for full pot or half pot? I have 28% chance of making it.
Or you could check. So if you have 28%, if everyone folds, what percent will you have then?
I would win. I don't need any percent.
So your win percent would be what?
100.
100. So if you bet and everyone folds, that's very good for you. Then you would win 100%. However, if everyone does not fold and you're in a disadvantage and you have 28%, is it more favorable for you to bet or to check?
Is it more favorable for me to bet or to check?
If you have 28% and your opponent has 72%, would it be good for you to bet, or would it be good for you to not bet?
If you say it like this, it's good for me to not bet, because he has more chance.
So the question here is, if you bet, do you expect all 3 to fold or not? If you think it's high likelihood everyone folds, then you should bet. If you think it's high likelihood that at least 1 or 2 will call, then you should not bet and try to make your 28%.
Well, in my games, people like to call. So there's a very high chance that they will call.
So then we should bet.
We should not bet.
Seems reasonable to me.
Okay, but if I bet, how much do I bet? Full pot or half pot?
Well, if you have 28%, is it better for you to bet small or big?
Well, if I look at my percentage, and I want to adapt it to my percentage, I would bet only half pot. But if I think that I need more protection, then I would bet full pot.
What protection if you have 28%? Protection you need if you already have the best hand. If you're 70% to win, that's when you need to worry about protection.
So, okay, if I don't need to worry about protection and I only have 24%, then I should bet half pot.
Well, the bigger bet could make it more likely that they will fold. But in general, I do think that it would be better here to not bet at all or to bet. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the half pot or small bet either. I don't really see a big benefit of it. They will just call that. Why would that be good for you? So really here, I would bet big and really try to make all three fold, or I would bet nothing. I would go one extreme or the other. I think if you go in the middle here, they will just call and then it will be worse for you. You want either three fold or you want a free river. I don't think you want just like a half pot that gets called.
Okay, so you in that situation, would you bet or would you not bet?
Yeah, I don't think all three would fold, so I would check.
Okay, if you bet, you go for pot size. So I went for half pot and I have one caller and I checked. And yes, pocket nines.
Yeah, and do you think he's going to fold his nines on the river? I'm not sure he would. So I don't mind that you check the river, right? But yeah, I mean, interesting hand. I think that's a good spot to call it a day today. So I hope you have a good rest of your week. I hope your meeting will go well with Mikael on Friday. I hope your book has the most success any of your books has had and will bring you great success. I will hope that you will have a good weekend and also that the problem with the cat finds its solution. I think we shouldn't minimize things like that. Sometimes, I mean, it's a real problem. And if it's like some things doesn't have to be big, but if they're very consistent, right? If there's a small problem, but it's there almost every day for years and months and so on, then the total of it will be a big problem, right? So I hope there will be some resolution to that also.
You're correct, Norman. And right now, the cat, even though she pushed it back, is not coming anymore on my balcony. So maybe he just won't come and I don't have to worry about it anymore. But I don't want him to run around in my apartment and mess everything up. And every time he sees me trying to attack me, to bite me, that's no fun. And the other thing is the way I live, there are good things here where I live in Switzerland, and there are also bad things. And my neighbors are a pain, because of mass immigration and so on. And also because the apartments have no isolation. It's a very old building and you hear everything your neighbor does. So that's very, very annoying. It doesn't bother me. The noise doesn't bother me. What does bother me is that they make a big deal out of it. Every time they hear something, they make a big deal out of it. They're intolerant. They're just intolerant and mean people. And that's hard to live with. But I shouldn't complain about it. I have a roof over my head and the apartment, even though it's expensive for Swiss price, it's quite good. It's quite good. So I have to also look at that part of the equation. And what I also want to say, Norman, the markets right now are very interesting. I don't want to bother you with it, but I think it would be enjoyable if we could have a talk and I could explain a couple of things to you. My opinions about the markets. Just have a talk. I think it would be interesting. Yeah, we can do it next week. But no worries. Maybe we make a break of a half an hour and I check a couple of charts, think about what we do, and then we start over fresh. During the break, you can do something else. See you next week, Norman.
Merci.
Bye-bye. And thanks a lot. It was great talking to you. I really enjoyed our lesson. It was very, very interesting. Bye-bye.